featured reader is Al Fournier, and he is originally from Royal Oak, Michigan, and has lived in Phoenix for approximately 18 years. He's an entomologist and a community volunteer in the Phoenix area. His poems have appeared in Gyroscope Review, the American Journal of Poetry, Third Wednesday, the Indianapolis Review, and other places. Tonight he's presenting his first poetry chapbook. Let's hear it. Summons on the Wind from Kelsey Books. And I just want to tell you two little other things, not about Al, before we start. But October, Jefferson Carter is doing a feature reading. He's from Tucson. And November, Shantae Orion is doing the reading.
Woo!
Okay, so, Al Fournier.
Thank you. And thank you, Pinna, for that introduction. I want to thank Changing Hands for hosting this, and I just want to say thank you to Pinna, who does so much, so gracefully for the poetry community here. So, Summons on the Wind. I'm going to start, I guess I need to stay a little closer. I'm going to start with an opening sequence of poems from the book, starting with the first poem, which is kind of the title poem, except that the title line comes at the end of the poem. This is after Robert Pinsky. If the dead came back, think how they would crowd the streets, milling along, their cumbersome purpose expired. At first we would encourage their visits, shell-shocked from our grief. But the mold stain they leave on the chair when they rise after tea would be difficult to clean. And though our hearts swell to see them again, break like light over the mountain at their touch, what comfort could it be knowing we, too, will leave, only to return again to the puttering world, leaching like soil day by day, searching with bleary eyes, famished, for a sustenance we can't find along grocery store aisles, having changed, like the leaves, but with no earth to spiral toward, no rain to aid our process of decay. The sun and season hurling by without us, a summons on the wind we hear but cannot answer. It's okay, you can hold the applause till the end. It's easier. Like I said, I'll read a couple more poems from the start of the book. This is Fiddle. If Nero really did fiddle while Rome burned, maybe it was because he needed the distraction. The smooth feel of soft blonde wood pressed against the skin of his neck. The rich high tones at first easing into the air with long strokes like a slow breath, then slashing it with rabid anger and revulsion. The mad music filling his little upstairs room, a sound that needed to be made, needed to be heard, if only by him, if only until the flames swept up and over him like a hot wave, drawing out the long final note, even as the music sheets curled into ash. This poem opens with a quote from St. Augustine, from the Confessions. It's called Scorch. You love without burning, Augustine observed of God, as if the miracle of love, combustible as dry grass, might flash into flame, scorching the soul of man, or smolder, its embers, remnants of creation's burden, to be made in his image, unworthy of the brand, wisps of smoke trailing from our skin, reaching out with blazing hand toward everything we venerate, cherish, adore, like Midas, but with fire instead of gold. So the book is in two sections. The first section is called Fiddle, and it deals mostly with the outer world, deals with issues of environment and social issues. This poem is based on the warning label on a jar of honey. It's called Warning. Do not feed honey to infants under 1 year. They may give up the breast. They might sprout mandibles and gnaw the crib rail restlessly, fly from the window with a craving for wildflowers, and forsake human form. And who can blame them? Distillation of floral nectar gathered in a million flights of drones, passed mouth to mouth, whole societies ordered around this purpose, to hover, to taste, to fly, pollen-laden legs dusting the air, trailing back to the hive. And isn't this how humans began? Community and kin, returning with food to nourish our young, stories round the firelight, cherished home among rivers and plains before we got the taste for nature as commerce. A memory this deep becomes a danger. Do not feed honey to your infant. They may become famished for a world long gone, waking up hungry in a place where nothing is sweet.
She said no.
I said no. All right, sorry about that, guys. Glacier. I don't think you mind that you're melting. Water complies with the spirit of its nature, shifts as easily as sunlight penetrates atmosphere. What seems to us a dramatic collapse, thunderous crash as tons of ice tumble, for you is a natural response to change. Never mind how your frozen flow once shaped mountains, valleys, lakes, how you fed the life that teemed there. You will survive as water rising on our shores, as vapor joining sky. Molecules of air long locked in your vast shelf effervesce in Arctic light, while stupefied, we watch from tour ships the crack and slide of one more shrine to a world that sustained us. So, I have a number of poems that kind of deal with some of the darkness, the dark elements of society. I'm going to read one, and it's a poem in a specific form. It's called a ghazal. It's spelled G-H-A-Z-A-L, and it's a series of couplets. And each couplet turns kind of to a new subject, and there's kind of a repeating word or phrase at the end of each couplet. And it's traditional. It's a Persian form of poetry, very ancient. It's traditional to list the poet's name in the last couplet. So this is Ghazal with opening line from Robert Bly. Now we who have listened so hard have nothing to say. The trees along the edge of the lake raise their curious heads at our silence. Rembrandt dreamed in the space between sleep and filtered light, sweeping the laden brush with curious strokes. At Mass, we pray for the healing of strangers, bow our heads, while apathy in America guns down the baffled masses. Some insist there is more darkness than light in the world, but how can this be when they are halves of the same thing? Astronomers raise their eyes to the universe, which replies with mathematical eloquence. Curiosity can be a form of prayer, and prayer a form of silence. When hate strikes you dumb, Fournier, deafens you, maybe God listens, curious how you'll respond. Thank you. I'm going to turn to the second section of the book, which is called Swallowed. And there's a number of poems here that deal with family life growing up and issues of grief. To me, the idea of being swallowed is about eventually coming to accept our own helplessness and still being able to experience joy in the world. I'm going to start with a few poems about my mom. This first poem is based on an old black and white photo of her from 1947. And in which she's holding my oldest sister as an infant. Madonna. Timeless in the dark. First stroke of sun paints buttons on her flowered dress. Her shoulders straight. Twist of hair spills down. With tilted chin, her hallowed face admires new life, pooled like water in her lap. Even her bare knee glows, smooth as a river stone, rolled in the mouth of God. I had to get my dad in here, so this next poem is called Shadow Dance. Upbeat band swings joy from kitchen radio. Father watches, unobserved. Mother's shadow dancing, elegant and slim, across the Frigidaire. Young again, before the kids. He's been all day plotting flowers, tender humored charms of unwavering sun, closest he can come to poems to show his love. Leaning on the doorframe says, "It's time I take you dancing." Her tiptoe smile, flirty glance, enough to last him decades after she's gone. All right, this is Secret Life. My mother knew many secrets she wouldn't tell. She carried them in soft folds around her eyes. Not even God could guess the meaning of her glance. When I was 5, I insisted I could walk to school alone, that I knew the way. I was so stubborn she relented, but followed in her car to see I got there safe. Robert Bly says that sometimes an angel's wings are too wide to fit through the door. I overheard her praying once, a whispered plea through a crack in longing. Sometimes I confuse my mother with the Virgin Mary, but I believe a part of her was wolf-wild, feverish and bright, bare teeth gleaming under a sliver of moon. When she died, even the silence missed her. That empty room, after they hauled the hospital bed away, never breathed a word about her absence, but clasped her secrets tight in curtain folds long after I'd grown. All right, if we're not mommed out, I'm going to read one that is a little more upbeat. This is the last mom poem. Women's Guild. I heard you joined the Women's Guild at the church when I was 5, so you could escape motherhood and housework for a couple of hours each week. It must have felt like a radical act, sipping tea and planning social events on Shirley Dixon's patio on California Street, only 2 blocks from our house. Dad in a rage when you didn't come home, as if the threadbare walls would unspool without you. Dishes piled in the sink, kids running wild, although really we were fine, plopped in front of the TV. You were sipping wine with your new best friend, your laughter rising among geraniums and arborvitae. Just you two, after the ladies left, tossing them back, forgetting the time. I can imagine Dad's crimson face the moment you stepped through the door, humming, happy to return, after a taste of kindness and sky, ignoring his glare, straightening as you sauntered with a charming smile toward the kitchen. I want to take a moment just to acknowledge and thank the amazing and generous poets of this community. I started as a pretty raw poet, not so many years back, and I learned a lot from many of the people in this room. And Phoenix is a great place, the writing community is a great place to be a poet. This next poem actually grew out of a workshop I took with Cynthia Schwartzberg-Edlow. She didn't make it tonight, but she's a phenomenal teacher of poetry and has a real love of poetry that's infectious. And so this poem I wrote for my sister Betty, who passed in 2014 from cancer. It's called Window Seat. When word came it was time to say goodbye to you, sis, I booked a window seat flight so I might watch Earth grow small as the plane rose into generous blue. I wondered what had changed. For 20 years, defying each gloomy prognosis, you beamed at every family wedding. Your garden flourished. Grandkids scattered smiles across your lawn. Thought about what I'd say as sunbathing clouds shadowed the ground, but arrived wordless to discover you, radiant, in a living room chair. I took the empty seat beside you. Beyond speech, you gave me your hand, light as a cloud with gossamer skin. Your eyes illuminated every space in our silence, made words obsolete. Family prattled on trivial matters. The Pistons won. Did you see on TV? Any topic better than this topic. I winced, but you smiled from some airy place. Later at the airport, I marveled how fearlessly you'd embraced life and could gratefully let go. Peering out, saw you on the tarmac, luggageless, your unbuttoned coat drawn up by a gust of air. You're actually doing pretty well on time, based on my estimates. I've got just a few more poems to go, so we'll have time to hear from everybody. Where am I going? So, you know, we all start out as children, whatever we're dealing with as children. And some of us, many of us, become parents, right? And that experience changes a lot of things. It changes your perspective on a lot of things, especially love. This poem is called Underside. Barefoot strolling summer coastline, your small hand in mine, eager to let go, taken with the pale pink underside of things. Like the shell you found and held out to me, its white-ribbed curvature cradled in my hand as you dashed ahead through cresting waves. Before you were born, my brother warned me of the potency of parental love, its untamed waters surging between peril and elation. On a podcast today, the poet expounded on the word tenderness, how he loves the verb form as in tending a garden or a relationship, the way the word holds both vulnerability and exchange. I listen, turning the pink and white shell in my hand. I thought my job was to ready you for the world. No, my brother said, your job is to remember what it means to be helpless. So this is kind of the title poem for the second section. Sometimes we must be swallowed. I will not be swallowed, I believe were Jonah's exact words, before the gaping fish maw folded darkness like a tomb shroud around him. He was stubborn, like his God, clinging to a skeletal certainty he'd hammered into place around him, calling it home. His faith in clockwork sun so fast, only darkness could save him. He brooded in that echoey ribbed cathedral until a storm savaged the sea. He marveled to feel the hurling vessel of the fish slacken on the untold will of the waves. Wrenching fear like a dagger from his heart, he laughed to his surprise and stood amid the pitching waves and cried the song of all his joy to God. We have two more poems. This one's for my brother Bruce. It's called Garden. When you told me about your garden, the gloom shading you lifted for a moment. Sunshine lit a tangled patch of green, thriving, even in neglect, in a corner of your yard. You walked me through tomato-scented air to the buzz of cicadas gesturing toward ripened fruits beneath umbrellas of lush foliage, romas, cherries, jubilees. Your gaze lingered on the peppers, cayenne, shishito, Anaheim. You plucked a cubanella. Sweet enough, you mused, breathing close to its chartreuse skin. You lamented the weeds, the receding strength of your body, cane propping you upright long enough amid fertile growth to register the derelict state of your life. But I caught the scent of garlic sizzling beneath your words, from garden to frying pan. I heard in your voice the sound of a soul remembering how sprouts rise above soil after rain, just outside the window. One more, this is it. All right, and you can all go nuts. So I took another fine poet in this community that had a workshop, Meredith Marin. I took her workshop, and I went in, and the first thing she said is, we're all going to write a poem about a tree. I said, look, what are we, like 6 years old? I was a doubting Thomas back then. But I'll tell you what, in her workshop, we went around table, I can't even explain the process, but by the time it came to it, this is what I wrote. By the way, that workshop was right here in that room. For a tree on Bright Angel Trail. Tree that sprang from rock, dry limbs wrangling life out of rising canyon heat and pressing cliff edge wind. How did you begin? What meager soil became your seedbed? What urge to drink chance passing rain made root cells grow, reaching for life to be met by rock? Your persisting cotyledons spread, absorbing sun, tenacious leaves one by one, compelled to bow beneath that wind. Your twisted limb manifesto speaks to me, asks no sympathy. You've nothing to forgive, no one to thank. You live, nothing more, not so precariously as it may seem.